a really sizable deposit down on a very nice home in New Jersey.
It was a very nice house. It had quite a bit of land. It was a $500,000 home.
It was very contradictory. She's becoming closer to Dr. Miller, but she's going along with Bill's idea of buying a house.
The marriage wasn't going well at all. So why were you buying this $500,000 house together then?
The idea for me was we had a chunk of money, cash, that we were putting down on this house. In the past, we'd come to points where we had been in similar situations, and he would, ultimately something would happen and he would go and gamble the money away. I figured this at least was an investment.
On April 28th, they're due to close on the house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and she's in constant touch with Dr. Miller, who's pleading with her not to buy the house. He wants to be with Melanie, and he sees a future life with her.
And Melanie told him that, not to worry about it. It's going to be okay. I'll take care of it.
After they close on the house, they go back to their rented townhouse. Bill is so excited. He calls John Rice. John said that Bill had never been happier. The last person Melanie speaks to that night is Dr. Miller. She tells him, look, we've closed on the house. Bill's had some red wine. He's asleep on the couch, but when he wakes up, we're going to sort this out, and I'm going to tell him I want a divorce.
Melanie described the events that would happen later on as a big fight.
You and Bill had a horrible fight, yes?
Correct. We fell asleep on the couch, woke up early morning hours, and it was never a bad time for an argument. I'm talking probably 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And it starts on the house. I settled for that house. The hell are you talking about? You settled for that house. It's a $500,000 house. That's not what I wanted.
Melanie says that Bill turned around and said, what I really wanted was a house in Virginia for cheaper, but you refused to let us do that, and so I have to settle. And she says this turns into a very heated argument.
From there, things became more physical.
How physical? In what way?
He shoved a dryer sheet in my mouth. He had a thing about dryer sheets.
The story that Melanie tells about a fight that seems to escalate over a dryer sheet is the same story she told us back when we first spoke with her.
We're still arguing, and there's the laundry basket, and there's a dryer sheet just hanging out of one of the baby's sleeves. He hated them. He thought it was lazy that I wouldn't stand there and put in the liquid fabric softener, and yeah. And it went out of control. This was the type of mother I was, that I would leave this sheet in there for my baby to possibly choke on. Before I know it, I'm up against the wall, and the dryer sheet is being shoved into my throat. And then he just smacked me.
In the face?
Yeah, open hand, because he probably would have broken my cheek if it had been a closed fist. And I looked down, and there's my 2-year-old. I grabbed the baby and went to the bathroom right behind me and shut the door. I just wanted away from him at that point. He said he was leaving and he wasn't coming back, and I could tell my children why they didn't have a father.
Did he say this to you through the bathroom door?
Yeah, through the bathroom door the entire time. I imagine he was packing things and leaving. He was up and down the stairs a lot, but every trip back and forth berating me.
What's the last thing you remember saying to him?
Stop. Stop.
Melanie said he'd driven off, and she presumed he was in Atlantic City.
He would have been back. He would have been back. I knew it.
But this isn't just a few days that Bill McGuire is gone. We're talking weeks.
What bothered me was that Melanie never reached out and said, hey, Bill's missing.
She never reported her husband missing, and it's almost 30 days.
The fact that we never heard anything from her was deeply suspicious to me.
Love is always ready to excuse, to trust, to hope, and to endure whatever comes. Love does not come to an end. This is the word of the Lord.
the early morning hours of April 29, 2004, Melanie McGuire said that she and her husband Bill had a violent fight and that he left and she never saw him again.
Melanie says the next day she got her kids up, she took them to daycare, and she started trying to figure out how she was going to move on with her life without Bill.
And during this, the next day, the day after that, the day after that, you didn't hear anything from him?
No.
Did you try calling him directly?
No, because this is what used to happen when we fought. You know, I'd call, whether it was to tell him off or to try to apologize or what. We just end up getting back into it again. I'm done now. I'm done.
She retains a divorce attorney, and at this point she does tell the divorce attorney that she has not seen her husband in a few days. And according to Melanie, the attorney advised her not to file a missing persons report.
My heart broke for her. She didn't deserve, nobody deserved that. But I told her that, you know, she needed to think about herself right now. She needs to protect herself.
I called a business associate of mine who was an attorney. She said, you need to get a restraining order.
State your full name.
Melanie Lynn McGuire.
She had to go in front of a judge and give sworn statement about the incident that happened.
Tell me what happened that brought you to court today for a temporary restraining order.
My husband and I closed on our first house on Wednesday.
That should be a positive thing, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it should. He's been behaving really erratically.
Ms. McGuire, you're safe here. Don't worry.
Melanie explained to the judge how Bill had been violent with her.
Did he hit you, ma'am?
No, not until, well, I don't mean to sound like I had absolutely no part in this. I said some not nice things and slapped me.
As part of the questions, Melanie was asked by the judge if she owned any firearms.
Do you know if there's any weapons?
Not to my knowledge.
This is a sketch of the body that washed ashore near the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel this month.
We're hoping maybe this will give us an edge and maybe identify him sooner.
About a month goes by between the time that Bill disappears and when Sue Rice identifies Bill McGuire after seeing the sketch on local TV. The next thing police have to do is notify Melanie McGuire of the death of her husband.
Melanie was asked to come down to the police station.
The officer came out and he says, "Is your husband William McGuire?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm sorry to tell you, ma'am, that William is deceased." And I just burst into tears.
But there's one thing she never asked. How was Bill McGuire murdered?
They did not tell her how and the condition in which he was found.
That would be one of the first questions that I would ask.
The next step was that the Virginia police wanted to speak with Melanie. Melanie agrees, but she brings her divorce attorney with her and another criminal attorney in that practice.
Conducting an interview with the victim's wife with two attorneys present is highly unusual. First time I have ever had that happen to me. She was nervous, she was visibly shaking, she made expressions like she was crying, but she never had a tear in her eye. I asked her if she had any luggage, and she informed us that they didn't have any matching luggage.
The next day, Melanie told detectives she suddenly remembered that the McGuires did own a matching set of designer luggage.
I showed her a picture of one of the pieces of luggage that we recovered in the bay, and she identified that as belonging to them.
They asked what kind of person Bill was, and she said he was the kind of person that had a knack for pissing people off.
She asked us, where did we find her husband's vehicle at? I told her at that point we hadn't found her husband's vehicle. And she said that probably a good place to look would be Atlantic City, New Jersey. She also informed us that her husband had a gambling problem.
Did he get involved with the wrong people? That's what I would have to believe, that he had gotten himself into something, and Bill always thought he could handle everything.
He was always into some kind of deal, so I think maybe this deal was his last deal.
After the interview was done that evening, We also conducted a search at their old apartment building. The apartment was empty. She had already moved out.
They asked him about Bill's possessions and his clothes.
We discovered that Miss McGuire had already given all of her husband's belongings away.
Virginia Beach detectives find out that Melanie McGuire had given most of Bill's belongings away to a friend's cousin, and they wanted to track that man down. Eventually they did and found out that most of Bill's clothing was still in black trash bags, much like the bags that contained Bill McGuire's body parts.
The garbage bag, by sight, looked identical.
Things are starting to make sense with the detectives. There's black trash bags, and there was also the hospital blanket that the head was wrapped into. And they're thinking, well, Melanie McGuire is a nurse. That's kind of an odd coincidence.
At Melanie's suggestion, detectives start to search Atlantic City for Bill's car. And lo and behold, that's exactly where they find it.
The Atlantic City forensic unit processed Mr. McGuire's vehicle. They took photos, they fingerprinted, they vacuum cleaned the floorboards.
The body was released to Melanie on a Tuesday. Immediately she had him cremated. And the funeral lasted all of 10-15 minutes at the most. She called the following evening after the funeral, and at that point I just kind of blasted her. I just told her, I said, Melanie, Bill deserves so much more. And Mel just said, well, I'm a single mom now, and now I've just got to get on with my life. I said, well, no, the next thing is we've got to figure out who did this to him. And after I got off the phone, I remember hanging it up, and I said, John, she did it. She did it.
Everything pointed to Melanie McGuire.
Through wiretapping her phones, the police discovered the relationship that she was having with Dr. Miller.
It's a eureka moment because it provides motive.
I've told them everything that I know. But they're, they just don't.
They want you to break.
What's the last thing you remember saying to him?
Stop. Stop.
People like to believe that someone was capable of committing this type of murder.
Accused of cutting up his body and throwing it into the Chesapeake Bay.
That the person who did that would look like a monster. But sometimes killers look just like Melanie McGuire.
Is there anything else you're not telling me? Like what? Like I killed him? Did you? But thanks for asking.
A scorched earth investigation was conducted, and the lack of evidence is resounding.
The evidence in this case points to a well-organized, meticulously planned execution of a murder.
Computer searches that said how to murder someone, how to poison someone, basically multiple searches about how you kill someone.
I don't get to be an evil genius and an idiot at the same time.
I believe that Melanie was wrongfully convicted.
Who do you think killed your husband?
Melanie McGuire, once a married mother to 2 little boys and a fertility nurse, is today a 47-year-old inmate at the Edna Mann Correctional Facility in Clinton, New Jersey.
In here, guilt and innocence is irrelevant in day-to-day life. I have 6 numbers and a letter after my name, the same as the woman on one side of me and the same as the woman on the other side of me.
After Virginia Beach exhausted their investigation, they realized all signs pointed north to New Jersey.
My name is Patty Prezioso. I was the lead investigator in the Melanie McGuire investigation and prosecution.
Patty Prezioso was a very driven and highly successful Assistant Attorney General in New Jersey.
You
let the evidence guide you and you follow it until it's clear what happened.
She was extremely competent, and it was obvious.
The task force had local police, state police, the Attorney General's office. They decided to treat this case with top priority.
It was clear that he had been shot, and trying to find out if any of the people close to Bill owned a gun was a top priority.
The detectives don't find any record of Melanie buying a gun in New Jersey, so they decide to check Pennsylvania.
They knew that Pennsylvania was close, and a lot of people will go to Pennsylvania for firearms because the gun laws are more lax. There's less of a waiting period, and so you can go in and essentially walk out the same day with a firearm.
It turned out that when the record check was done with Pennsylvania, a record came back that Melanie McGuire had purchased a gun.
I remember plain as day when she came in, because not many women come into the shop. She filled the forms out, and then when she wrote down her occupation, that she was a nurse, that stuck in my mind, because I guess that was the first time I ever sold a gun, to a nurse.
Melanie bought a Taurus 38 Special, and she bought wad cutter bullets.
And that gun was purchased just 2 days before Melanie McGuire said her husband went missing.
And remember, early on, Virginia detectives talked to Melanie, and she never mentioned anything to them about buying a gun.
I had informed my attorneys of the purchase of the gun, and they said, well, if they ask, don't lie, but don't offer any information. And they never asked about a gun.
Melanie bought the gun because Bill wanted her to buy the gun. She could get it, he wanted it. What he wanted, he got.
Because Bill McGuire had a felony conviction stemming from his horrendous driving record, he was barred from purchasing firearms.
You say your husband asked you to purchase the gun, but you purchased a gun just 2 days before your husband went missing.
Of course, it's a coincidence. However, he was on me for a while about that, about trying to get that. And if something was happening, if he was in some sort of trouble, that may very well have been the reason why he was so intent on getting it.
Once the police really honed in on Melanie, they began wiretapping her phones.
Hello. Hi.
The surveillance was so intense that over a 40-day period, they recorded 500 hours of her phone calls.
Every time you get your head back above water. Yep. And that hand reaches out from beyond the grave.
A lot of those calls were very cryptic.
Hey.
How you doing? I spoke to, what's his name, about shipping?
Alex.
I didn't want to say name. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
She used the phrase a lot, being cut off at the knees.
At least meet with a lawyer ahead of time who might cut it off at the knees.
Doesn't that look suspicious?
It doesn't matter what it looks like.
She was a little salty. That was her personality, though. She was a Jersey girl.
A lot of them were to her boyfriend, Dr. Bradley Miller.
It was very clear right from the beginning that the relationship with Dr. Miller was different. There was a change in her voice. It was a softer tone.
It's a eureka moment when they realize that she's having an affair because it provides motive. Dr. Miller also becomes a suspect. So one night when Dr. Miller was leaving work, he was going to his car. The detectives came out to confront him.
Dr. Miller was adamant that he had nothing to do with any crime and he didn't know anything about this. And so I think the police said, well, prove it. If you're willing to wear a wire, we'll believe you.
It is now 2:30 p.m., May 31st, 2005. Brad Miller making an outgoing call to Melanie McGuire.
Hello?
What's up? I've told them everything that I know. But they just don't.
They want you to break.
I mean, if you want us to stick together, I gotta know everything now. Before this goes any further.
What do you mean you have to know everything now?
I mean, there's no other secrets between us, right?
That I can think of.
You swear you should never do this.
In those intercepted phone calls, another friend she was speaking to was Jim Finn.
Melanie met Jim Finn in nursing school, and Jim admittedly had a crush on Melanie.
But once she left nursing school, she never talked to him again. You know, that was it until February 2004, and she suddenly got in touch with him again.
When she needed something, he was someone that, you know, she could manipulate, and she knew he was a lover of guns.
The police also approach Jim Finn because they find that before Bill disappeared, she's been talking to him about the firearms.
She said to him, hey, I need to talk to you. There's some weird stuff going on here, and Bill is acting weird.
Jim, who really still holds the torch for Melanie, and Melanie knows that, says, well, maybe you should get a gun to defend yourself.
Investigators pick up Jim Finn, who also allows them to record his conversations with Melanie. And once they hear what's on those calls, they're satisfied Finn knew nothing about the murder.
The reason I asked you about buying a gun is because my husband wanted one. He wanted one? Yeah. Not only did he want one, I bought one for him. Why didn't you tell me?
At the time the detective spoke to Jim Finn, he had no idea that Melanie McGuire had purchased a gun. He was surprised.
Is there anything else you're not telling me? Like what? Like I killed my husband. Did you? No. But thanks for asking.
Melanie never wavers on whether or not she was involved. It is always a hard no.
I want you to tell me the truth. I'm telling you the truth. I did not do it.
She was under a microscope. Everything she did was being watched. Everything she said was being listened to.
Melanie does something that most people would find a little suspicious.
Investigators start looking at her E-ZPass records. They notice trips to Atlantic City.
She knew that Bill McGuire's car was in Atlantic City because she put it there. That requires 2 drivers. So that means someone helped her.
What investigators find in Atlantic City has them wondering, did Melanie have an accomplice? And if so, who was it? The next set of clues in the mystery of who killed Bill McGuire leads investigators to a 170-mile stretch of toll road, the Garden State Parkway. With Melanie now the prime suspect, detectives start pulling her records. They try to track her movements in the days around her husband's disappearance. And one of those is her E-ZPass statement.
So when investigators start looking at her E-ZPass records, they notice that there were charges for 2 trips to Atlantic City.
On April 30th, 2004, just 2 days after the fight Melanie said that she and Bill had, Melanie does something that is very odd and most people would find a little suspicious.
I'm starting to become more actively angry at him. And I'm thinking, that son of a bitch, I know where he is.
According to Melanie, she decides that he's probably in Atlantic City gambling, so she's going to drive down there and she's going to look for his car.
Absolutely not rational, but get in the car and go down there. And I'm driving down, and I take the first pass on this highway, and I see a dark sedan. There's no way. There's no way. And lo and behold, there it is.
Once Melanie spots Bill's car from the highway, she decides she's going to move his car. Melanie says in the past, when they're angry at each other, it's a way of messing with each other, I guess you could say.
Pull off onto a little side street, and I parked my car, and it was like Mission Impossible. Scooted up to the car, got in, started it, and drove away.
And where'd you put it?
What I believe to be the Flamingo Hotel.
What Melanie said was, I was going to move his car to the seediest part of town, the most annoying for him to find.
That just didn't make any sense. That he was physically abusive to her, but then she goes to mess with a car with a guy that she claims she doesn't want to be around.
It sounds beyond ridiculous sitting here saying it, and I acknowledge that, and I can't, it's the truth.
It's an incredible story, meaning it's just not credible.
We believe she was planting his car in Atlantic City. She was trying to create an illusion that Bill McGuire was still alive. That requires two drivers. So certainly that means someone helped her. Someone had her Pathfinder and she was driving Bill McGuire's car. They put the car at the Flamingo Hotel and then she went home with the person driving her car.
And investigators thought they'd struck pay dirt when they discovered that hotel's parking lot had surveillance cameras.
In truth, of course, the footage did not capture who the driver was.
The surveillance video from the Flamingo Hotel actually showed the victim's vehicle being pulled into a parking space. Because of the darkness and the glare and the background lights, you could not actually see the person that was occupying the vehicle.
There was another inexplicable road trip, this time to Delaware, 5 days after her husband went missing.
She had shared with Dr. Miller that in the early morning hours of May 4th, she was actually furniture shopping.
Investigators think that this Delaware furniture trip is really just a ruse.
That same road would have taken her to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel.
Normally, someone would take the New Jersey Turnpike to go over the Delaware Memorial Bridge, picking up Route 13, which runs south to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Tunnel.
Patty Precioso says that Melanie actually left the night before from New Jersey, drove Bill's remains to Virginia.
We believe that that was when she took the suitcases with Bill's remains and got rid of them in the Chesapeake Bay. And the first suitcase turned up the very next day.
But of course, Melanie thinks this theory is preposterous.
Virginia Beach is another 450 miles from Delaware. So, I mean, you're talking about hours, and there just isn't enough time.
And why would she drive all the way down to Chesapeake with the body parts in the car, thinking, I'm not going to get stopped, I'm not going to break down? What a chance that is. You know, I mean, you can't stop on a bridge and open a window and throw 3 suitcases out.
Maybe if it was one of these pieces of circumstantial evidence for which you might have a reasonable explanation for 1 or 2, but we're talking a large amount. You can't have reasonable explanations for all of them.
It's a mountain, and it's a lot of coincidences, and that's absolutely.
But coincidences don't always make for the best evidence, and detectives were still searching for any physical evidence that would link Melanie McGuire to her husband Bill's murder.
Where is the proof? Where is the forensic evidence?
The task force is convinced that Bill was murdered and dismembered at their townhouse in Woodbridge, so they concentrate on that.
They went back 4 to 5 times to search for any evidence.
They did everything that you would typically think of, right? They brought in the luminol, pulled down parts of the walls, they pulled out the piping, pulling floorboards up. They really turned this place upside down a number of times.
They were trying to find bullets, traces of blood, and nothing ever came up.
Couldn't find any forensic evidence whatsoever to establish that this was a crime scene.
I don't know how you would dismember a body and effectively clean that up.
Despite that glaring lack of physical evidence, investigators still believe the circumstantial evidence is enough, and they arrest Melanie McGuire.
So surreal. Day like any other, getting the kids off to daycare.
We surveilled her to the school, waited for her to drop her children off.
Walking out of the building, I'm not even off the curb. Melanie McGuire, can you come with us, please? I knew.
2 years and 10 months after the first suitcase washed up, the trial against Melanie McGuire commences in Middlesex County, and it was a sensation.
The evidence will show that while Bill was engrossed in purchasing the house, the defendant was very busy planning his death.
There is no proof that Melanie McGuire murdered her husband.
The prosecutor said either Melanie McGuire is guilty or she's the unluckiest woman in the world.